Hi, fourth graders. Today we're going to be learning about division using the partial quotients method. This method with partial quotients is using familiar facts and the multiples that we already know to solve a division problem. Some of the vocabulary we're going to be hearing is dividend, and that's the number that we're dividing. The divisor, that's the number we're dividing by. The quotient is the answer, and remainder is the number that you have left over. And keep in mind, there's not always a remainder. So this is what it looks like when we are writing it on paper. You'll see it on workbook pages. You have the dividend that is underneath the little house. That's the number that is being divided. The divisor is the number it's being divided by. So how many groups, for example, would we be putting it into? That's how many we're dividing it by. And then the quotient goes up on top of that little house. That is the answer. And so sometimes you may have a remainder, and that is included at the top there where your quotient goes. So you would have your dividend divided by the divisor, and that equals the quotient. So our steps when we're using partial quotient method is that you're going to first think to yourself, what can I multiply the divisor by that gets me really close to the dividend, but without going over? And we want to use our familiar facts. Then we repeat this until you can't subtract anymore. You keep thinking of facts, familiar facts, multiples that are getting you close to the dividend. Then you do your subtraction. And once you've done that, you're going to add up all the partial quotients to get your final quotient. Here's our first example. So we have 168 underneath the little house divided by 4. And I'm going to think to myself, what are the easy facts that I know? Well, I know 4 times 1 is 4. I know that 4 times 2 is 8. I know that 4 times 3 is 12. I know that 4 times 4 is 16. I know that 4 times 5 is 20. I know that 4 times 10 is 40. But I see here a 16, so I'm going to use 4 times 4 because that 16 gets me really close, but it's not actually 16. I need to add a 0 and multiply it by 40 because then that gets me to have 160. So then I do my subtraction, and that gives me 8. Am I done? No, I'm not done because this number is still larger than this 4. So I need to go back to my easy facts, and I know, well, 4 times 2 gives me 8, so I am going to multiply my 4 times 2 to give me my 8. Then I'm going to do my subtraction, and then I'm left with 0. So now I know that I'm done. So what's my final step? I need to add up the partial quotients, and I get 42. And 42 gives me the quotient, which is the final answer. Okay, so now we're going to practice a problem, and it is going to be 746 divided by 4. So I'm drawing my little house. I've got my divisor on the outside, which is 4. I'm writing my dividend is 746. Okay? I'm going to think about my easy facts. What are my easy facts for 4? Well, I'm going to write them down over here in the corner. If you if you think of them you can think of them and keep them in your head. You don't need to write them down, but it's very helpful to write them down. So you think, okay, 4 times 1, well, we know that's 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3, 12. We know that 4 times 4 is 16. We know that 4 times 5 is 20. We know that 4 times 6 is 24. We know that 4 times 7 is 28. We know that 4 times 8 is 32. And let's see, we can take it all the way up to 10. 4 times 10 is 40. 4 times 100 is 400. So let's use that 100 to begin with, because it's going to take us close to that 746. So we are going to write along the side 100, because we're going to multiply the 4 times 100, and that's going to give us 400. We need to subtract. Now 746 minus 400 gives us 346. Okay, so now I need to think about what is going to get me close to 346 without going over. Well, I'm going to look at 34. 4 times what? 4 times 8 gives me 32. So 4 times 80 is going to give me 320. So I'm going to write that 80 here. And so 320 is what I get when I multiply 80 times 4. I'm going to do my subtraction. I'm going to get 26. So now I'm not done yet. I'm still thinking, okay, what's going to get me close to 26? 4 times what gets me close to 26? Well, I know 4 times 6 is 24. So I am going to use 4 times 6. I'm going to write my 6 there. That's a partial quotient. It's 24. I'm going to subtract. I'm going to get a leftover here of 2. Now that is going to be my remainder, because now I cannot go any smaller. So now I'm adding up my partial quotients, which are 180 and 6. And I write that up at the top. 186 is my quotient with a remainder of 2. So I write 186 R 2. And that is my quotient. 746 divided by 4 equals 186, remainder 2. Okay, let's look at our next problem that we're going to practice. We're going to do 342 divided by 6. 6 is our divisor. 342 is our dividend. We're going to think of our easy facts. You have them in your head. You can keep them there in your head, or you can write them down off to the side. I know 6 times 1 is 6, so let's go a little higher. 6 times 5 gives me 30. 6 times 6 gives me 36. 6 times 7 gives me 42, because I'm looking to get close to that 34, right? So I am going to actually use the 50, because 6 times 50 gives me 300. And so then I'm going to subtract 342 minus 300, and I'm left with 42. And I know 6 times 7 is 42. So I'm going to put that. That's a partial quotient. I'm going to write my 42. I'm going to subtract. I get 0. I'm done with that. My last step is to add up the partial quotients, which are 50 and 7, and I'm going to get 57. So I'm going to write that up at the top. That's where my quotient goes. There is no remainder. Okay, here we go. Let's practice another one. Now we've got 3 is our divisor, and our dividend is 483. It's 483 divided by 3. My easy facts for 3, well, let's go with 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 6 is 18, 3 times 7 is 21. Let me think. What about 3 times 100? Well, that's 300. I can try that. That's going to maybe take me up here close to the 483. So I'm going to do 100, and I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to get 183. And now I'm going to think, well, what does 3 get me close to? How do I get close to 18? Well, I know 3 times 6 is 18, but 3 times 60 is 180. So now I subtract, and I'm left with 3. Am I done? No. 3 goes into 3 once, so we do that. 3 times 1 gives us 3. We subtract. Now we add our partial quotients, and we get 161, and there are no remainders. And now we're going to look at 469 divided by 8. My easy facts for 8, well, 8 times 3, we know is 24. 8 times 4 is 32. We know that 8 times 5 is 40, because we're looking to get close to that 46, right? So we know that 8 times 8 is 64, but I think we've got something here. We can try that 50. If we know 8 times 5 is 40, we know that 8 times 50 gives us 400. So we're going to subtract, and we're going to get 69. And now we know that 8 times 8 gives us 64. So we're going to write down our 64. We're going to subtract, and we're left with 5. And that 5 is less than 8, so we can't go any more. We add up our partial quotients, and we get 58 with a remainder of 5. But I want to show you what you can do with partial quotients. You don't actually, sometimes you try different numbers, and you can keep trying until you get that number lower than the divisor. So I started with 40. And I know 40 times 8 is 320. I put that in. I subtracted. I tried a 10. And I got 80, so 149 minus 80 gave me 69. And then I got close by multiplying 8 times 8 to get 64. I'm left with a remainder of 5, and I get the same answer, 58 with a remainder of 5. So now it's your turn to try these 3 problems, and we'll see how you do.